Hello, my name's Jo and I work for the Field Studies Council, which is an environmental education charity. Now normally, in my day job right now, I would be busy teaching students in and about the world around us. But for now, like you, I'm restricted to staying in and staying safe. So I'm making this programme for Together TV to show you how to challenge yourself during lockdown, to help the environment and create a pond from upcycled or recycled materials that you can find in your home or garden. This is a fun, constructive and hopefully satisfying activity that can be done on any scale or any budget. Now I'm going to show you my attempt at a finished product and then take you through the step-by-step process to create your own pond project. So we're ready for step one. The first thing to consider is finding a suitable vessel for your pond. Now I'm particularly lucky to have this old sink that we took out of the kitchen when we moved in here just before the lockdown. But ultimately, use anything that you can spare or find lying around. Garages are a great source of useful junk, or at least ours is. And the only requirements are that it is or can be made watertight and that it's easily lifted so that you can move it to your desired spot. We'll talk more about that later. If you can, preferably find something that's white or at least light in colour on the inside, as it's much easier to see the organisms as they arrive, but it's not essential. So I found this old washing up tub that I'm going to be using. However, it doesn't have to be something like this. Other examples, here's an old fridge salad drawer that we found, or just an ice cream tub. Any of these could be a suitable pond. So once you've decided on your vessel of choice, step two is to find a suitable location for it. Choose a sunny spot near either a wall or a border. This gives shelter and encourages any insects to come in, whilst flowerbeds are going to provide a habitat and encourage larger visitors, such as maybe newts or frogs. If you have any deadwood to pile in your flowerbed or large pots, then all the better. Next, you're going to need to decide whether you want a raised pond, like this one, or to sink it into the ground, which we might do with this. Either way has benefits, and your decision might simply come down to how energetic you feel and how attractive the container you're using is. If you don't dig the pond into the ground, you need to make sure you consider how different organisms may access it. Insects mostly are going to fly in given time, but amphibians may need an access point. So we've put this stick here. Also, think about the position of this, as it's more useful having a stick or branch into a sheltered flower bed than onto your lawn. If you do decide to sink the pond into the ground, you need to dig your hole so that it's going to be snug around the container with a small lip to stop any small crawling organisms from falling in. So I've dug the hole. I'm just going to fill in around the edges. Don't worry if some goes in, you can always sort that out later. You'll notice that here there's a nice wild area with lots of different flowers, and we've got some rocks around to kind of simulate a wall as well. So now we've got our pond situated in the ground. Don't worry that there's some dirt in there. Once we fill it up, that will settle out and it will form its own little microhabitat. So the next thing is we need to think about actually filling it with some water. Ideally, you'd want to use water collected from a water butt. However, I appreciate I'm really lucky to have access to one. So if you don't, then you can try and make your own. Check out the weather forecast and leave out buckets, jam jars, any other containers to harvest the rain to fill up your pond. So rainwater is better than tap water, say, because it's got natural microbes like bacteria and algae which are going to help promote growth and colonisation in your pond. Now I appreciate you can't always have access to lots of rainwater, so initially if you want to put tap water in you can, but once your pond's established you shouldn't use tap water in your pond. So this is some rainwater from our water butt, and I'm just going to fill the pond up, not all the way, because we are going to put some rocks in a minute and that will raise the level. Don't worry that it's really murky, it is going to settle out, and some mud at the bottom, as I say, is going to be useful. So next we need to make sure that there is access and a way out for any organisms, as well as a way for flying insects to visit. Now we've had lots of bees visiting our pond and using the rock as a slipway to come down and drink. Very cute to watch. So we're going to carefully place a larger stone into the corner of our container. And then if you have any other large stones, you can build that up to form a slope or slipway. If you don't, you can use lots of different pebbles. These are just ones that I've collected over the years. form a slope. They're also going to look really nice in the bottom of your pond. So you can add as many of those as you want to. Now we also had a stick bridge for our pond because it was a raised level one. So you could also try and do that. And we know that that's been really useful because we've had lots of visitors. So we've had some frogs visiting our pond already. This FSC guide is a really good way of identifying frogs and newts and any other reptiles that might visit. So you've got amphibians on this side and then reptiles on the other. These FSC guides are really good for children and adults alike to be able to understand what kind of nature is visiting your pond. So we need to make sure that your pond has some variety of habitats. By adding things like the stones, the mud, any bacteria that are in there are going to be useful for helping to decompose the matter in your pond, but we're also going to add some other things as well. So recently on one of my daily walks I found a little pond in a woodland area near here. You could use any kind of slow streams or a pond in a local park or something, and just collect a little bit of water from it. Now within this water we've got all sorts of different bits of debris, so there's some duckweed here, there's some sticks, there'll be lots of different other micro algae as well that's going to really start to colonise your pond. So we're gently going to add that to the mix. So it might look a bit of a mess at the moment, but what we've done here is we've added really useful stuff, and you've probably got some little creatures in there as well that are going to help start the process. Now eventually, with any plants, algae, debris, rocks, sticks, stones, all of those things, they're going to start to form habitats. And hopefully in the future, that's going to start to attract things like damselflies and dragonflies to your pond, which are the really big, exciting things that we want to see. So now your pond is all set to become a fantastic habitat. You're going to need to give it time, but after a couple of weeks, you're going to start to see life appearing. One thing to note, if you have managed to get lots of duckweed into your pond, it will start to reproduce very quickly, so you might need to clear a little bit of it out, but just make sure there's no living creatures in there. So life in our pond is fairly well established now, and I've taken this small sample just in a tray, although you could use any container, and we're going to use the freshwater ID guide. This is the FSC name trail for freshwater, to just see what we've got. So I've put a little sample in the shade here to have a look at. So this guide's really useful because it gives you questions and answers to work with. So you start at the beginning and you work your way around to find the creatures. So if we look, for example, at quite a simple creature like this snail, then we can see when we look at the guide that this one is a ram's horn snail. Okay, so some of them you can see really clearly without using the questions, but some of the things might be a little bit more difficult. So these ones are water hoglouse. They look a bit like woodlice, and if you look at the guide, again, the pictures are really useful so you can see there exactly what it looks like. But if we go through one example here, so we're going to look at this creature in here, and I'll read the questions out. So the first question is, does it live in a case or a shell? Which it doesn't. Does it have legs? Yes. So we follow along. It has 6 legs. Okay, and then the next question is, does it have 1 or more tails? So hopefully you can see here it has 3 tails, and that takes us up to this question. So are the tails longer than the width of the body? Yes. And then we're up here, is it a mayfly nymph or a damselfly? And hopefully you guys can see that it is a true damselfly. So this is a juvenile, a nymph, which is essentially going to hatch out into an adult and then fly away from our pond. So obviously once you've finished enjoying looking at your creatures, you need to put them back really carefully, okay, and make sure that there's nothing left stuck to your tray, and we'll also empty that in a minute. So hopefully you'll enjoy looking in your pond, and feel free to have a look at these guides as well. They are useful. Enjoy the project, and even if you don't get dragonfly nymphs or great diving beetles straight away, you might find that you get some feathered friends visiting for a quick bath.